Okay. Well, thank you, Beth. We're so excited to have you with us again to share some of your insights and expertise. Last time we got to talk about the manuals to modules, and this time we're going to talk about teams and tools. And I know you have a lot of great insight to this. But before we get into that meaty subject, tell us about your introduction into early education, early childhood education. How did you get into all this?
Well, it's funny, Lynn. I didn't mean to get into early childhood education. I meant to get into children's fitness. I had been a school teacher and an aerobics instructor. This was back in 1998 and wanted to not go back to the classroom. And I had worked in fitness, loved kids, loved teaching. And so I started a business, bought into a franchise called Stretch and Grow to teach fitness classes to children in childcare centers and preschools. And so that was the introduction. And, of course, evolving over the years, I became the international trainer for Stretch and Grow, started speaking at conferences probably about 20 years ago. And so it's really just kind of evolved out of a love for who we are and what we do, and just a love for the childcare, preschool, early education world. And it's been so fun since then. Of course, COVID hit, and so many gaps in our industry were realized that we have this amazing network of people who absolutely love children and ran their schools very well, but didn't really have a lot of business acumen, didn't have a lot of ways to track their strategies, and they didn't have a lot of systems in place. And so when COVID hit, it really revealed a lot of those inconsistencies. And when I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't help them with their kids right now, but I sure can help them with their back end systems. And so just started speaking a lot on that. And here we are 3 years later.
Well, you and I have a love of systems. I think we were separated at birth on that particular part of the journey, but thank you for that. So we're going to get right into the teams and tools. And we're going to start with a little bit of level setting and what a definition. So I listened to you recently at a conference, and you used a term that resonated with me, anti-fragility. So it's
Yes.
memorable, and I think it's so timely, and we have to embrace what that means. So get us started. What is it? What does it mean?
Well, it means that we are Yetis, not teacups, is what it means, Lynn. It means that when we bounce, we don't shatter and crack beyond repair. Resilience is a great word, right? And resilience just means to bounce, to stretch and then to bounce back. Think of like a rubber band, right? You stretch and then the rubber band goes back to its original form. Well, what the last few years for us have shown us that we didn't just get stretched and we never actually went back to our actual form. We are
True.
stronger, we are more resilient. So anti-fragility just means the ability to withstand the pressures that would try to break you, but you come back and you are more resilient, you are stronger, you are more capable. And so this anti-fragility is a mindset that even though we have felt fragile, and when I brought that term up into kind of a focus group, it was very, oh my gosh, do not use that word, Beth. It reeks of anti-empathy.
Right.
And I said, hear me out. Let's play this out. It's not a lack of empathy. It's accepting the brutal facts of the current reality and realizing that we're still here. And I think that the leaders who were fragile aren't still here anymore. And the
Very
ones who are remain standing are absolutely here, and they are ready to dig in and level up and learn more how to be the best leader they can be, business owner they can be, and put those systems in place so that when things do get hard again, they won't be bogged down in getting in the being the bottleneck in their business.
right. They're gaining elasticity, like you were just saying.
For
We didn't
sure.
bounce back, but now we're learning to have that elasticity as adversity comes, and it does, and it will. It's
Right.
here to stay. So I really appreciated that. And then when we start looking at what does that mean in terms of our leadership styles and how we lead our teams, and looking at being self-aware. So you've talked a lot about this, and being self-aware requires courage, and it requires a culture where it's okay to be something other than absolutely perfect. So let's talk about that. What does it mean to be self-aware, and how does that come into play with early education and your team building?
Well, I think seeing people is your superpower, right? So being aware of who you are when you go high and who you are when you go low, very important. But also important to know what that is for your team members as well, especially with the people that you are leading. The Enneagram is a tool that I use. It's my favorite tool just to help me quickly understand those core fears and motivations. And so, me, like as an Enneagram 3, for example, as an achiever, I know I can get a lot done. I have the capacity to do a lot of things, but I also have the capacity to become a workaholic and
Yeah.
to put my work expectations on other people, because I can get a freakishly amount of work done,
Yes, you
but
can.
not everyone works in that workflow. And so that energy can often demotivate people when I'm over here saying, here's my to-do list, friends, look at all that I'm doing. And they're like, whoa, like you're at a 10. I'm going to need you at like a 2 because I need to process things. And so just the reality that we all have very different lenses that we see from. And,
Yes.
it's interesting. My daughter actually works for me, and there's nothing like getting a daily dose of, you need to fix your face, or that's not realistic, or you need to rethink through that, the way that you said that, or you need to rethink through this idea that you have, because she'll tell me, right? She'll be the absolute. So she's kind of been my mirror of self-awareness. But, I think, that's a tool just to help us arrive at, those core fears and motivations, but just to acknowledge that other people don't think the way that you think. They don't process the way that you think. They don't approach conflict or adversity in the way that you do. And the importance of leaning in and
Yeah.
listening to what's happening on your team, and not being the first to speak, and just shutting your mouth and
Yeah.
watching how things happen and what goes on. It's really, and sometimes it's hard, especially for a talker like me. I'm a talker and I like to talk about things. But I've learned that when I listen, my mind is open to so many more possibilities with how I can help my team.
I love that. The fix your face, I call it the 11s, like when you start to scowl and the 11s show up in
Yes,
the screen.
yes.
Fix your face. You're overreacting to what you just heard. So spot on with that. So when we start talking about the differences, you have a lot of experience with this. I find I come to the table sometimes with a bias. So I might be saying, well, this is how I always expect Beth to be or Lynn to be. Talk about that and how a tool like this can actually break down those preconceived notions and barriers.
Well, a word that I really studied a lot in the last few years is called confirmation bias. And that just means that you, like exactly what you said. I've already decided what I think about a situation, so I come into the situation with that confirmation bias, expecting, Lynn, because I know you so well, I expect you to be organized and spot on, and you see the world through your systems lens, right? And so I expect that from you. And so knowing that is your personality, if I'm going to come to you with a project idea, I'm going to need to know Lynn needs the very clear facts. She needs
Yeah.
to know not only where we're going to go, but she needs to understand, okay, what are the steps that you're about to ask for me so that I can get to this end goal? Is that right?
Oh, yes, for sure.
Right.
You know me
And
well.
yes, and the process is important to you because I know and understand your personality. To whereas my personality, I'm going to need you to. I don't need all the details. I just need to know where we're going. Give me the cliff notes for it, and
And we're going
help
to
me
get it
organize
done.
it in my brain the way that I need to do it. So again, it just an understanding. There are feelers, thinkers, and doers.
Hmm.
And when I know that I'm talking to someone who's a thinker, a processor, I need to focus on the process. If I know I'm talking to someone who is a feeler, I know I need to downshift, listen to their heart, pay attention to how they're feeling. Because if they don't feel good about the project or about what I'm going to ask them to do, I'm not going to get their buy-in for it. Right.
Right.
And then there
Right.
are the doers who just need to understand, like, okay, tell me what you need me to do with no emotion attached to it. Just give me the list.
Yes.
And it's
I
been really
appreciate that.
helpful in understanding that.
Helping us understand one another. And it's less intimidating when you have a common language, because I could see somebody who's like, this is what we need to do and how quickly can we get it done with nothing else in between. That can
Yes.
be very intimidating. If I need to feel like I don't have to be that person, I can be who I am, which is okay, that's all great, Beth, pump the brakes. Here we are today. Where do you want to be in 3 months, and what does that look like, and how will we know? So 100% agree and appreciate those differences. And it made me think about something else you've recently spoke on, and that is we have the opportunity, especially now, to rethink our org chart. So, what
Yes.
might that mean? Let's start pulling some of these pieces together. What might that mean, and what might that look like?
So, my heart to really help leaders build their leadership bench has come from a deep study into the generations. Right now we've got baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z that are all in the workplace. And so we all come to work with a very, very different approach. And one of the and the majority of my team, they are Gen Z, born after 1995. And so I need to truly understand what motivates them, what's going to keep them to stay. We've been through the great resignation and the quiet quitting. We've been through all of these trends that truly Gen Z is driving. And so my heart is like, okay, what is happening? What are they thinking? Why are they thinking the way that they think? And how can organizations adjust to say, okay, this is what we need. This is where we're going. These are our vision. This is the vision. These are the values. But how can I take the way that this whole group of people think and fit them into my organization and make sure that they feel seen, heard, and valued? So that's
Yes.
hard, right? You've got 4 different generations. How do you make all of the generations, all the personalities feel seen, heard, and valued? So this is what we know about Gen Z and really millennials is that titles and responsibilities are very important and matter to them. In my career, I'm Gen X. I don't care about titles. When someone says, "What's your title?" I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I can be a speaker, a teacher, an entrepreneur, a business owner, CEO. What do you want me to be? Because
Exactly.
you do all these things, right? But titles matter. So this is what I learned that when I look at those people on my team that are showing initiative, right? They're picking up extra shifts. I see them mentoring another new team member without even me asking them, just that natural instinct to step up to the plate. I'm like, that's a leader.
Mhm.
So what I've done in my own team and my stretch and grow team just this summer, I've spent the entire summer figuring out another layer of leadership, not just from my directors to my team, another layer of leadership. And we're calling them coordinators,
Okay.
whether we've got, someone working as an enrollment coordinator, someone working as kind of a team lead coordinator. And so what we're doing is we're building just one more layer of think mentors, think leaders to help and support my other people. And the idea behind it is to, I don't want to lose these awesome
Yes.
people who are rock stars on my team. And
Yes.
if they think that they don't see a path for growth, they're out. They're out. And so how can we look at our org chart and say, why do we just have director, assistant director, lead teacher, assistant teacher, floater? Here's another thing. I
Yes.
hate the word floater, Lynn. I don't
I
like the
do
word floater.
too. Go for it. Go for it.
Well, here's why. Someone who is a quote floater is super valuable because they're flexible, they're helpers, they're willing to pitch in wherever you need them to be. If you have the right person in that seat, call them team support because that is what they are. And I would even venture to say I have pulled out 2 really great teachers from their teaching role. And I have made them, we're calling them team lead coordinators. They're truly team support because they're going to be floating in and out of different classrooms supporting people. So yes, it was hard to pull a great teacher out of that classroom, but now they're able to support, not just float, right? Float just means someone walks in and they're like, "Hey, here I am. What do you want me to do?" And they don't take ownership in it, right?
Correct.
I want the person who's supporting my team to be a leader. I want them to take ownership. I want them to know how to lead every program, every age level. I want them to be leadership level. So I've just really been inviting so many of my childcare business owner and leader clients that I'm working with is to look at those people who are great in the classroom. And we get afraid of pulling the really good teachers out of the classroom,
Oh, for
right?
sure.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
But let me tell you this, don't pull them out without their permission because I have made the mistake of moving someone into leadership that took away their sparkle because what they were really good at is the classroom. And they
Yes.
really didn't want to be a leader. But I'm like, "Hey, you show up, you're great." And I talked them into being a leader. Bad idea.
I can see why. They don't own it. And like you say, it's taking away from part of what their passion is. So you've opened up a door also to talk more about kind of a leadership assessment. And it's perhaps part of the Enneagram. But when we start talking about certain tools or things that you can involve your team in. Let's discuss the stretch assignment, and then I have another one I want to unpack with you. So what exactly is a stretch assignment other than stretch and grow? It's not
Yeah,
that.
stretch and grow, right? So when you're looking at people on your bench that have the, I would say, emotional intelligence and that take the initiative, right? That have the drive, and you see that in them. Instead of just saying, hey, I want you to come be a leader right now. I'm going to change your position. I'm going to move around the org chart. Now you're a leader. Before you do that, I like to give what I call stretch assignments. So a stretch assignment might be, hey, can you do a one-on-one with this new teacher and see how she's doing? Here's kind of the format. Here are some of the questions. Can you do a one-on-one? Could you help plan this back to school event? Would you be willing to step in and teach a format you're not familiar with? Would you be willing to help with writing curriculum? So if you're a leader and you're listening to this, think of the things that are on your plate right now that you possibly could. And here's the difference I'm going to give you two different concepts. One is delegate, one is transfer responsibility. I don't just mean something that you could delegate. I mean, initially you will, because when I think of the terms, when I say I'm going to delegate something to you, Lynn, that means it's really my responsibility, but I'm going to ask you to do it for now.
Right.
And then let's say it's payroll. You're doing payroll. So every 2 weeks, I have to delegate payroll to you. Well, what if I'm doing payroll? I don't want to do payroll anymore. I need to move my job description to something else. So now Lynn on my team is going to come in and she's going to do payroll. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to let you watch me do it. I'm going to create an SOP, probably because, I'm a visual learner too. I'm going to do a video SOP, and I'm going to use a tool that it's called ScribeHow. And ScribeHow just screen records your clicks. So it's like, it gives you a PDF of the actual steps that you took. So
Awesome.
So in addition, you've got the video with my face and my voice, but you also have the ScribeHow. It's just an AI tool that you can use to say, this is the SOP for doing payroll. Then I'm going to give it to you to watch you. And now Lynn has a system for doing payroll, and I have transferred that responsibility to you. So I don't have to say, okay, Lynn, every 2 weeks, it's time for you to do payroll. Now you know that's your job. So you start out with just delegating to see how someone could do it. And then if they shine and they sparkle and they rise and they want to do the thing, well, now you see that's a stretch assignment that I gave to you. Payroll was my example to you. And now it looks like, gosh, Lynn is really great with the details on this. I'm going to give that responsibility to her. So it's slowly beginning to move the roles and responsibility out of the director or owner's shoes onto someone else. So you're not just building what your chart looks like, you're taking a look at those roles and responsibilities to see, okay, who's doing what here and what does the day-to-day look like?
What I appreciate about that too is it's not just here's a manual, which I know we both have the same feeling about. Let's get away from paper-based manuals, but you're actually modeling and mentoring by being able to show them your voice, the steps, so that they then have ownership. They feel confident. They feel like they understand their role. They're going to thrive. But again, if we step all the way back to, if I made assumptions about Lynn's always this way, I might not ever have had the opportunity to engage in that stretch assignment. So I think those stretch assignments are something that's brand new post-COVID. Love that you've brought that to the table for discussion, because I think that will energize some of the staff and teams to say, wow, I've got potential here. Maybe there's things I've never thought about before. So love that. And it goes hand in hand with something else you do, which is the stay interview. Talk with us about what a stay interview is.
So it's the proactive version of the exit interview. So, when someone tells you they're going to leave, you're like, oh my gosh, what could I have done to save this person? Right. So the exit interview is very reactive. A stay interview is just a meeting. It's just a connection that you have with I would say your rock stars. I call them your A-team players. And it's just, stay, I use as an acronym. You're going to connect with these people, I would say outside of the center if possible. Solidify your relationship at the start. That's what the S stands for. Just connecting with them and let them know what they mean to you, how important they are to you, where you see them going in the organization, what value they bring. Then you take down their concerns. This can give you insight to, like, Houston, there might be a problem.
Yes.
This is where you step in and you pay attention to the tension. And because I've never done one of these and asked some really hard questions and not gotten some feedback that I probably otherwise would not have gotten. They probably would not have come to me and said, "Hey, Beth, by the way, I've noticed this." So that's, that's always kind of a concern. But then you ask the right questions. And then of course the why is actually your why. You want to find out, like, what is their why? Like, why are they here? Because
Yes.
everyone that's in education has an intrinsic reason that motivates them to stay in their role.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it has to do with generally the way that they impact children, either something that they are able to give to children that they did not have, or something that they received and they want to give back.
So stay away from the traditional questions of, are you making enough money? Are you
Do
happy
not
to live
ask.
here?
Two things not to ask. Do not ask if they're making enough money, because the answer is definitely no. And then another question is, ask them, are you happy here? Because happiness depends on happenings, right? And they could have had a rough day. And
Very
that might
true.
not be the greatest question to answer, but, do they find joy in the job? Are they finding joy in what they do? And you want to unleash that. I mean, I just believe that you can't put something into someone that's not already there. You can
Yes.
give skills and knowledge. You can't give talent. Our job as leaders is to draw out what is already inside of them and help turn that talent into performance.
Yes. So joy and happiness. You've spoken about this quite a bit too. And you kind of glossed over the happenings and can drive our happiness, but talk a little bit more about joy and happiness. Why that's so important to take the time to have that conversation.
Well, just again, because so many things happen during the day that are not happy. And I think if we're really finding joy in our lives, we can have the perspective of, okay, what went well today? Like, what went well today? What are some things that brought me joy during the day? Because when we get to the end of the day and we're like, oh, that was an awful day. Was it an awful day, or was it an awful, like, 30 minutes? Did that
Right.
interaction with the child who was just having a particularly tough day, did that make it the whole day horrible, or are you just all spun up because you had to chase a 4-year-old who's faster than you? You know, because I mean, I just had that happen on my team. I mean, one of my girls was like, "Oh my gosh, like the school wants us to do our classes outside, and we're outside, and we have a 4-year-old little boy who thinks it's fun to run and he wants to play chase." And so when my instructor's on the playground and she's got 10 other kids who are like hanging out, like, "Hey, we're here to have fun," and then this other child who's like, "Catch me if you can," it makes for a challenging day, right?
Yes, it
But
does.
the joy in doing what we get to do hopefully will override that. She was able to wrangle her little friend. He got his thinking cap back on. He was ready to, engage with the kiddos and have a good time. He just needed to run out a little energy. And so the joy has to come in. Do you truly feel the impact of what you're doing? Or are you just showing up for a paycheck? Because this is what we know, Lynn. There are a lot of places that you can go for a better paycheck, or for sure the same paycheck, right? A lot of places.
Agreed.
If you don't truly love children, you're not going to be happy doing what we do. And
Agreed.
that's what I think so many people have said, oh, experience doesn't matter. I'm just going to hire someone. And then they're like, take a mirror. Like, can you fog this mirror? Okay, great. Can you pass a background check? Perfect. You're hired. And then they think that they can teach people how to love children, and they can't. They can teach them what to do with the kids, but if they don't have that true talent of wanting to nurture and love on little children, you can't teach that to them.
We could spend the rest of our time just talking about interview questions, but we'll hold that for another podcast. We do have to deal with the challenging part of when it is necessary to terminate somebody. But you
Mm.
have a great saying about the language around that relieves the director and leaders. So let's talk about how you handle that.
Yes. Oh my gosh. It was just a spark that I had. I had dealt with just a great, wonderful employee who, I mean, I would keep her for 1,000 years if I could just watch her performance in the classroom. But she had a lot of what I would say weaknesses that we just could not manage around. And weaknesses like, not coming to work, basically, calling out for all kinds of crazy things. And so she missed quite a bit of work, and I gave her grace upon grace upon grace. And when it came down to the end of it, I had a conversation with her and I said, listen, this is what I need from you. If you want to be here, I want you to be here. But if you don't show up and, gave her some clear expectations, you are going to disqualify yourself from having a spot on our team. And I don't want you to do that. So I want you here and I'm willing to work with you, but this is what you agreed to. And this is what I'm going to need to see from you. And Lynn, literally a week later, she sends me a text. Didn't sleep, can't pull through, need a sub. And I'm like, oh. And so I went through, took her out of all of our systems, didn't even respond to her text. And she called, she's like, did you just fire me? It's like, no, you just disqualified yourself. She said, what does that mean? And I go, well, we had the discussion that if you didn't do these things, that you were going to lose your position on our schedule. So you've disqualified yourself. And Lynn, I have had so many leaders, when I go places, they'll come up to me and say, Beth, thank you so much for that language, because I felt so bad about having to let someone go. But I realized I was very clear with what the expectations of what it took to work here. And they can't continue to do these things and work with our children because their presence matters so much with the kids. And so it was such freedom for me. And so it warms my heart to know that it's been such freedom for some of my early childhood leader friends.
I didn't fire you. You disqualified yourself. I mean, it's straightforward because you've been crystal clear. And like you said,
Yes.
grace upon grace. So, and they're probably going to be relieved in the end anyhow, because it wasn't a good fit for them if they couldn't meet the core values of the company. So,
right. And you release them back into the universe. There's something else that they're going to be great at. It's just not working with children.
Agreed. So I have a couple more questions for you before we wrap up on the teams and tools. If anybody listening wants to do the early education Enneagram test that you've created, how would they get their hands on that?
Super easy. Go to bethcannonspeaks.com/Enneagram, ENNEAGRAM. And so I'm sure you can link that in the show notes.
Okay, great. Because it is fun to do. And we're doing it with my team, and just that appreciation for the different styles that all make us even better when we can fully appreciate those differences. So highly recommend you doing that. And so we're going to pivot just a bit here. And I want to get your viewpoint on, as you look down the road in the next 3 to 5 years, what do you think the biggest challenge is going to be for early education? We want to be looking down that path, but also be thinking about what we can do to be better prepared with some of the things that we know are coming our way. So take it away.
Well, I mean, not to be a Debbie Downer, but the funding appears to be drying up a bit from what we see right now. And Lynn, I'm an optimist. So I just have to believe that the powers that be and the governments that are around are going to look at this and see, one of the big things COVID taught us was that there is no workforce without early education. And it cannot be, parents cannot afford high quality care, and schools can't give high quality care without paying teachers well, providing a great curriculum, and providing a really great experience for their kids. So we're going to have to figure out how to leverage, how to bring the funding back. I think we need really business savvy owners and operators. I saw so many people that just said, oh, great, we've got funding, so we don't have to market. We can keep our ratios low, all of the things. But yet they didn't really pay attention to the numbers in their business. And now they created businesses that were dependent on funding, and that's about to dry up. And and I'm scared for them.
Right.
So, so there's that. But anyway, I believe that I'm hoping that more funding will come as well. And then of course they say a recession is looming. Who knows, right? But I have been in this business for 25 years. I survived 9/11. We survived 2008. I think there was another thing in 2013. I've seen it go up and down. Parents will always need care for their children. Always. We're not going to stop having children. There's always going to be a need for childcare and early education. So that I believe. We just have to collectively figure it out. And I think we have some really smart brains in our industry, people who are going to push, people who are going to advocate, and people who are going to help us figure this out so that women and men can go to work and support their families while they've got quality care for their kids. So that is what my hope and belief is. I think bad things could be coming, but we are smart and we're going to figure it out.
We are. And we've got more elasticity.
We're anti-fragile.
We're anti-fragile for sure. And also, The last thing that I want to talk to you about, Beth, and get your insights is we all have favorite quotes. And I'd love to hear, I know you have many, but one that really is a pillar for you, your go to. Let's wrap with that.
Well, this has been a summer of overhauling the back end systems of my business, Lynn. And this is what I believe it. It's a Maya Angelou quote. It says, nothing works unless you do.
Mm.
So you can put your systems in place. You can be prepared, but the implementation part matters so much. We can put a lot of systems in place and set it and forget it, but the work that leaders do, you have to be engaged and involved. So whether you are just pouring into your top level leaders or whether you're pouring into your own team, nothing works unless you do. And that's probably, for people they're thinking, no, I'm ready to back out of my business. Don't do it. Stay engaged. Find a way to stay connected to your people. And so, that would be, I guess, my worldly quote. But, one of my favorite scriptures is Proverbs 3, verses 5 and 6. Trust the Lord in all your heart, lean not on your own understanding, and all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your path. And so just as a person of faith, I just trust that there's a plan. And so I wake up every morning and just really pray that I would know the direction, that I would know the conversations, that I would know what my workload's supposed to be, because I could do 1,000 different things, right? And so for me, it's just kind of getting anchored that there's a plan and who can I help today and where am I going to make the most impact? And so that's probably the one that I cling to the most.
Fantastic. And you have many, many gifts, but you are an encourager and you pour back to the community as you learn these things. You spend so much time speaking and working on these retreats, but you don't just keep it to yourself. You then pour it back into the community. And that's part of what makes you such a great partner, and glad to have you on the podcast. And we'll do this again.
Thank you, Lynn. It's an honor to be here. Thanks for having me.